We want to keep talking about our 38 story elements, and today we are working in settings and we are continuing on to objects. So please tell us, what are objects and what is their significance in the writing process?
Sure, yeah. And this is one I had trouble with when I first started writing
Yeah.
because it's a tricky thing to put in the right objects and use them in a way that's engaging to the reader.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, really an object is just the things that are in a scene.
Right.
So that could be millions of things. And how do you as a writer figure out what the heck am I doing here?
Yeah.
So the biggest thing when you're looking at objects is the object should perform a function. And by that, it could be a clue. It could remind a character of good times or bad times and be an easy jump into some backstory or a flashback. It could cause conflict between characters. So the objects we're talking about here are the ones that are relevant to the story. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean you won't have other objects in your scene. Of course you will, because you need to fill it out. But
Hmm.
the ones we're talking about here are the ones that have some kind of meaning. It can provide richness. So that one's a little bit less obvious if you're trying to establish, a person is very wealthy or very poor, or they're a slob, or they're very neat. You can use objects or
Hmm.
lack of objects to
Right.
show those things. And that will just add depth and maybe even have a double purpose for your story.
Hmm. Hmm. So we're putting all these objects in there. Anything we should avoid? Any pitfalls there that happens when we're using these? Because I find it can be very cluttered and a little
Mhm.
confusing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really, there are lots of pitfalls. So, let's talk about first the first time an object appears in a story.
Hmm.
And here we're talking about key objects. You'll want to describe it in a way that is really helping your story. So, if you think of it in a little bit like a character, it has a role. So,
Hmm.
and with that role, it's doing something for your story. So one of the first things to look for is when you're describing a setting where your character is, don't make a list. It comes across like a grocery list that people skim. Did I buy this, buy this, buy this, click, yep, yep, not interested. And a reader is never going to remember a list that has more than 3 things in it. So all you're doing is making them skim and a list. And now they might have missed something really important in there. And sometimes a more novice writer gets a little trapped with that one because we're taught kind of hide the important things in the middle somewhere so that it's in the reader's head
Hmm.
that they know about it. And so when it comes up later and you use it later, they go, oh yeah, that makes sense, it was there. But if it's in a list, they're not going to remember, and so it's not effective. So if you look at something like her desk was littered with items, a brush, a mirror, lipstick, a notebook, a used tissue, and a hair clip covered the surface. So what, you ask? And rightly so. If it's not linked in some way to the story, the reader doesn't care.
No.
So try choosing two of those things. The desk was littered with her items. I picked up the brush and pulled out a hair. I used to love running my fingers through her hair. The lipstick glared at me as if it knew what I'd done. I would never kiss her lips again. And now there's something. And
Oh.
you will remember, lipstick's there and that brush is there. So maybe this is a murder mystery. There's a clue and there's the
DNA.
DNA in that hair, or right, like something.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, there's emotion in there, and there's a reason the character in the room is looking at those things and touching them and thinking about them. So I think that's a little bit better. The second
No,
example.
definitely. I don't care what's on our desk.
No, you don't. It's so true, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But you do if all of a sudden you feel something.
Ah, that was cool. You got me there. So, how are we going to use these objects effectively? We got writers here. We're trying to help them figure out how to do this. We've given them the list. Objects. What do they need to do when they're looking for objects?
All right. So, of course, you know where I'm going with this. You need to keep track of your objects in every scene.
Yeah.
So, what you want to do if you have key objects in your scene, those are the ones you want in your list. So, if they are important for the story, you want to make sure you have them.
Mhm.
And it's important in your list because if you move scenes around and revise or cut scenes, you need to know, did I cut out the introduction of a key object, or did I move it till later? And now in an earlier scene, I can't possibly know about it.
Mhm.
And when an editor goes through your book and you're revising it as a writer, I guarantee you're going to move scenes around and you're going to
Yeah.
cut scenes. And so you have to know the key things that are in there. So that's really important for your list.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is that you want to then look at, well, what other objects are in this scene? They don't necessarily have to be in your list,
Mhm.
but you need to know they're there and look at how did you use them and describe them? And can you up the emotional significance or the significance to the story of those objects? And if there's things in there like, okay, I have a pen and it's not related to anything, cut that object and find something else that you can add in. And then you'll start really using objects within your setting to draw the reader in and to have emotion and to move that story forward.
Exactly. So we're going to make a list. We're going to find all our stuff. We're going to make sure that, and again, that's a good point. I think if we're moving things, we kind of forget that, yeah, that maybe that object needs to come back here if it's going, "Meh." So yeah, that's very helpful situation. And these lists can be long, folks. We understand that. So it's always good to take a look. But these 38 elements are basically proven again and again. The best stories we've seen are the ones that are having all of these items taken care of, and also getting our story arc and our everything resolved in the right way. So follow the patterns, follow the list. All right,
Yeah.
Christina, that was great. We're going to continue on with settings, and I appreciate everyone following along today. If you like what you've seen, please like, follow, share this with other friends who might need this information. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Joelle, and see you next week.
Thanks for watching. Try Fictionary Storyteller free for 2 weeks at fictionary.co. Storyteller will get you one step closer to telling that powerful story you dream of.